everyone. I'm so glad that you're joining me this week. I'm your host, Ryan McCarty. We talk about everything people, culture, engagement. So this week, I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to Champion Your Culture. What's up? Sorry, we're a little bit late on today. We had some issues with audio. I think we still have some issues with audio, but hey, we're here. Welcome to Champion Your Culture. Always excited to have people jump on live with us on LinkedIn. You might be on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. We're all over the place, George. We're growing, homie.
All over the world. Hey, I can hear you, dude. You sound great. Everything is beautiful.
What?
So we are good to go.
Oh, well, there we go. I have no idea what happened. It must have just been, I don't know.
Yeah.
I love our new branding, man. I'm not sure about the on and off switch on the mic. It looks like you might start to serenade us or something with that mic, brother.
Hey, the mic switches are off, baby.
They are. What the heck? I didn't even realize that.
That was probably the problem right there. It was mentally, we saw the picture of the microphone thinking it was off.
Vision, bro. Vision.
Yeah. There you go.
But so excited to have everyone on. Something that happens every single week is that we come on live on Wednesdays. A really cool announcement is we've committed to do this weekly on Wednesdays from 10 to 10:30. So you're live with us now. We'll be live next week. We'll be live the week after that. We'd love for you to join us every single week. We talk about culture and people, how to champion organizations, especially as we're going through so much tumultuous change post-pandemic. George, I know you've experienced a lot of change through your work. What are some of the things that you're experiencing yourself, or would you like to just kind of start by getting some interaction going with some of the people out there?
Yeah, I think we do a good job, and I'm really interested in. And so as we start this, I want to make it aware and let our people know to drop questions in the chat. If you're watching live with us right now, we love your questions. What are some of the challenges that you face in remote work? Maybe it's leadership is not really bought into it. We can give you some tips and strategy, and we'll share some of those naturally anyway. But if you have any questions on this topic, at culture, all things culture leadership, at any point in time, don't feel hesitant or don't hold it back. Drop that comment in there. And I just encourage everybody to like and share the stream. As always, we're sponsored by Culture Good, and we want to be able to bring and do good to those who are watching us. In regards to this topic, Ryan, I think as we talk about creating this top-notch culture for remote work, I think some of the challenges that initially start off, right, are naturally the hesitant. Change is always hesitant, and adapting to those changes and things of nature. What are some of the pros and cons? What if we go remote and workers are not bought in, they're distracted with things that are going on at home? My thing, and literally, I just talked to our CEO, Rob McDaniel, a few weeks ago, and I said, hey, I'm driving, and I love driving. Anybody knows me knows I love a good drive every day. So I literally drive an hour to work. I drive 49 miles from south of Nashville to north of Nashville. If you ever driven through Nashville, it's about as bad as Atlanta in traffic. There's competition there, baby.
Yeah.
What I realize is that I'm spending 2.5 hours of my day on the road.
Yeah.
And as we're growing as a business, I said, what would it look like if I work remote one day? Now, if you know me, I'm too connected to people. I love being around people.
Yeah.
But just yesterday, after a big meeting I had with one of our sales executive and a potential client, I went home for an hour and a half, 2 hours left of my day. And I probably got more done in those 2 hours than I did in the 3 or 4 hours. And the reason why, and I realized this as I was talking to Joey, one of our other team members this morning, I said, I think I just get up in my office upstairs, and although my wife works remote, like we're separate areas of the room, and I'm literally there's nobody there to talk to. I'm alone. So all I have is to get shit done.
Yeah.
And dude, I've gotten more done on the Fridays that I've been at home. I feel more accomplished. And I think it's the mental, hey, I got an hour drive at home. I got to listen to podcasts. I'm listening to books. I'm prepping. I'm making phone calls. It's just a different energy. And so some of my own personal fears, and I'm speaking from experience, I was not the type of person that wanted to work at home.
Yeah.
That's an option, but I just didn't want to. But my problem here is when I'm in the office, there's 30 or 40 other people that are that I'm looking forward to talking to.
Right, right, right.
Or this when they come into my office. And so there's some challenges there, man. But there's
Yeah.
definitely that enhanced spirit. Not only cost of savings. You can talk about how much gas you're saving. I'm driving 500 miles a week in my 2011 Honda. She is beautiful up the hills. So, but there's
Well,
challenges, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, anything is going to present challenges when it's a new framework that we're working with. I think of it anytime anything goes through transition, right? In relationships, with your spouse or significant other, anytime a family goes through transition, any organization goes through that, everything evolves with that, right? So the culture evolves. So I think one of the things that's interesting is how we're trying to make the same type of connection happen and the same type of engagement happen remotely as we did when everyone was working together. And I know some of you might be out there listening and you've got that hybrid model and you're trying to say, okay, what is going to work for us? And some of the things I think is interesting is, hey, the model in terms of a hybrid model or a remote model of work that works for someone else may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for someone else. And you may try some things that you've heard other companies do. Let's do 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, or similar to what you're saying. You have a flex schedule potentially where on Fridays people can get off a half day, but now you're making people drive in for a few hours. And like your situation where you have 2 hours of driving, and then you tell people, all right, we need you to drive in, and that's going to be 2 hours of your day, and then we're only going to have 3 hours of work on Friday. That seems like a waste, right, of your own money and of your own time. And so I think one of the things that we have to come to terms with is, not everything is going to work for everybody. And one of the principles that I live by is work what works for you.
Yeah.
Work what works. Like ultimately, you've got to know your employees, and you've got to know your customers. You've got to know your product, solutions, services, your culture. And not only do we have to work what works, we have to realize, like I said, that what works for us may not work for everyone else. And that's okay. You got to figure out what's going to work. There's no rules that says everyone has to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? Like that's not a rule. We're making up rules that don't even exist. What is your culture? Who are your people? Who are your customers? Like, and how can we collectively use this opportunity through remote work as a benefit, right? As a way that, like you're saying, this could complement a lot of people's work. Now, obviously, I don't want my brain surgeon to work remotely, so not everybody can do this either, right? So we're talking about a certain, type of industry and business, obviously.
Yeah,
I
for
don't
sure,
want to
for
do
sure.
I don't want my heart surgeon doing surgery in his house.
Right,
But if it's
right.
if it's not necessary for people to be in there, there are certainly things being lost, and there are challenges, and it is different, and it's not going to be the same. As much as we try to make engagement look the same now as it did before, it won't be. What does it look like now? What does culture look like now? And how do we drive engagement now as opposed to what it looked like before the pandemic? It's just different, you know?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a lot of communication too, because I think as you offer remote work, you have that natural tension, right? Of being able to explain why one department can work remote and why
Right.
another department cannot. I think there's some challenges there, and if you don't do that right and handle it right in forms of communicating effectively the importance of why we need said department versus why this department is able to work from home, 100% of the time or 90% or 80% of the time. Sometimes those challenges and more so is a mental, I
Yeah.
see what everybody else is doing and I feel like I can do that at home as well. And
Yeah.
let me prove it. And so how do you handle those challenges? Because those are some truth, challenges, especially in an office scenario where, administrating department, may work remote, but sales department may have to come in. What are some of those challenges you think or how do you relate to those challenges and really communicate as a leader to your team members if that wasn't something you were facing, Ryan?
Well, I think at the beginning we have to know who those employees are, like I was saying, and how is this going to impact them, and also, where the culture breakdown most of the time happens is that middle management, right? When we're thinking about culture change and how we're developing an organization to embrace new cultural norms, new values as it's evolved, and now there's a new method of work, and we have one department that's coming in a couple days a week. Another department may say, hey, we don't necessarily need to even be in most of our work. Maybe it's like the financial sector. You might have everyone that's got everything secure at home and everything could be done and reporting and all of that. And so really we have to say, okay, how are we going to lead this change in a way that every single stakeholder group within the organization internally sees how this process and this remote mode of work is actually benefiting them. But as it pertains to how different departments run, that's a middle management scenario. So each team should have built enough trust with management to understand that that manager can then trust their employees to be able to say, okay, if you can do this at home and if you can drive KPIs and be as successful, if not more successful at home, let's give that a shot. Let's try it. Give employees an opportunity to prove that out, because it's in the proving that we allow them to really own it, right? They own the culture. I think every single person, regardless of whether you're entrepreneurial in your mode of life and lifestyle or not, you should look at your work today as not just a job or a career, but that's your own company in a sense. You should look at your future in terms of your career entrepreneurial. Like, how am I growing? What opportunity do I have? And so when we have employees that are like, let me do this, I say, trust them and learn with them on what is going to work and what's not going to work. And really communicate that in a way that everyone collectively knows we're all trying this together, y'all. We don't have it figured out. And I think as leaders, we need to come first saying, hey, we're trying, we're giving it our best shot and we're failing. And this is where we failed in the last few months. And this is where we could have done better. But this is the opportunity that we're looking to capitalize on, because this gives us an opportunity through remote work to be able to do A, B, and C. What are those benefits? What's the why? And once people understand the why, I think they can get behind it better. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole lot of talking, bro. Oh, you're on mute. There you are.
That's the beauty of that. No, that's good stuff. I had a call, so I wanted to mute myself, so it wasn't
Oh,
on the screen while
okay.
you're such deep thought there. But I think some of the best practices to really build on that, and it's never too much talking. I think what we want to do is provide as much content and really things that can be actually put into place for those who are watching us, and give them some valuable content on that. No weird plug here, but we do got some exciting things going on here in about 3 or 4 weeks in Indianapolis, Indiana. And with the actual hands-on training and material. Let's touch base on that if you don't mind. You want to share just a little bit of information. October the 5th through the 7th, we're going to be coming live from Indianapolis, Indiana, with championing your culture and really creating culture, certified culture champions for the workplace. Elaborate a little bit more on that, Ryan.
It's really exciting because it starts on Wednesday on the 5th, and it begins like around right after lunch. So right at 1 o'clock, and we go have dinner that evening. We have a workshop that first day, introduction to culture of good, what it means to build one in your organization, tailored to the unique qualities of what makes you special. That first day is really amazing. We get to know each other really well and just build that camaraderie. Second day, there's several workshops. We start right in the beginning of the day. We have a full breakfast and a full lunch for everyone. I mean, it's a really great training, because as we go through this process, each person that comes with their project of culture and what their organizational objectives are. And through the 3 days, and we end on that third day on the 7th, right about 1 o'clock, where we actually complete the certification. But that third day, we pressure test your strategy. It's not just a culture good strategy. It's using our framework to design a culture strategy for your organization, the objectives for your business and what you want to accomplish. And we pressure test that as a group and say, okay, what's the next 3 months look like? What are your next 3 steps? And we really make sure that everyone that comes to get trained is really equipped and empowered to go back into their organization and do this work and really lead it and build their culture team and build a culture of good that engages employees, customers, and community all through one streamlined effort, which I think is a beautiful way of saying, as a leader, I want to connect with people, but I don't have all the time in the world. And as an organization, we can't engage with every single person. So let's streamline all of that and engage all of our stakeholders through an effort we call culture of good. So if you are interested in being trained in that, we're coming down to the wire here. We do have some more spots available. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at culturegood.com. One of the things that we teach, George, I'm glad you brought this up, kind of leads into this next idea here with how to build a communication plan. I'm going to post a something on I think on probably all the social medias later, and I think I posted before, but it's something that we teach in terms of a culture communication plan rollout. So once we identify stakeholders, we know who those stakeholders are. An example of that would be your employees are a stakeholder group, your customers are a stakeholder group, your community. Those are the 3 key stakeholder groups. And then what we do is we start looking at, okay, but you also have new hires. That's its own group internally. The communication plan for new hires is going to look different for someone that's worked for you for 20 years, right?
Right.
Talking to someone about remote work that's worked for you for 20 years, that whole conversation is completely different than you would, someone that's 24 years old that just got hired. So, and what we teach is called ADCAR. It's really organizational change management process. It's a way of communicating and leading change. So part of it is building awareness. ADCAR stands for building awareness. Then you build desire, you build knowledge, you build the ability. So each person has the ability. And then you get into a process of reinforcement. So people need to know why the change is happening. They need to know why remote work as an instance, or why we're changing to a hybrid model, or whatever it is. And so you're building awareness in that first part. And then you're building desire. You're saying, what's in it for you? And then you build in the knowledge. What do they need to know? What is the need to know for them to be equipped and to have the ability, as it leads into the next thing, the skills that need to be developed for them to actually contribute toward that change. A lot of times companies just make change happen. We're all just like, okay, we're going remote work. Good luck. And we don't give our employees the skill sets to even work remotely. I mean, for those out there that have never worked remotely, it can be very daunting to do so. How are we training people to even do that well? And then when they don't do it well, we reprimand, or we discipline, or pink slip them, or whatever. And it's like, we've never built in the skill set, and we've not evolved to that place yet where we can actually say our employees are empowered to really work remotely or work hybrid, and they have the ability, and there's practice runs, and we're doing that, and we're embedding that change. And then obviously we get into this space where we're reinforcing that, and we're talking about the desired outcomes. We're giving positive feedback, rewarding, encouraging employees to keep going through that process and keep communicating. And, we're building trust, but it's that ADCAR process that we teach. And I'm glad you brought up the certification, because that's one of the areas that I think, as managers, if you were to say, I want to be developed in an area of my leadership, you coming to learn how to build a culture of good in your organization, be trained and certified, you're going to learn a lot more than just a certification for culture of good. You're also learning the ADKAR method. We use the SMART method. There's other methodologies that we use that you'll be able to lead change throughout the organization with your team, regardless of it, if it's just culture of good aspect related or any type of change in the organization. ADKAR is a great way to really develop a communication plan, a strategy to be able to lead change well.
That's good stuff. I want to get into, and maybe we can end these next 5-6 minutes giving some key foundational principles on creating a culture of good remote, right? And so some of the key words that we talk about a lot in culture of good is obviously having a foundation. So what is our foundation on? I think when we talk about not being able to see and feel and touch a team member in a sense of physical presence, I think there has to be that foundation of trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything that you just talked about is so important when it comes to that trust factor. You have to be able to establish a standard protocol that your systems are able to be founded on, the benchmark periods, that stages and time periods that you can really evaluate final results and things of that nature. One of the things that I heard you say, and I think is important, is really measure everything that you're doing, right? Measure those things, those KPIs, and be able to track them over time. And I think there's an importance of never stop teaching, because as a person, you should never stop learning, right? We're always learning. We're 40. I'm about to be 40 years old in a couple of days, bro. And I know you're there, but we're always. It's important to have a teachable spirit. And always teach, observe, and review, right? And be able to go through those processes so that you can anticipate and really plan for when things go down. Be a data-driven business, so when things are declining, you can understand why, but you also know that you have a team that's teachable, that's going to be able to observe and review, to be able to execute, and then really establish a foundation of that. Hey, we're going to do this together. We're in it to win it, and everybody wins when the team wins. And so we win together, never lose alone is something that I always tell people. We got to win together, never lose alone. And with that comes fires, and we just got to be able to extinguish those fires immediately and not take it personal, and just understand. But at the same time, take it personal because we are human, and that's important. Another thing that I'll drop it to you to give yours. I think the other thing is, and this M word is something that's important to us, and that's prioritize meaningful work, right? Prioritize those things and teach people, as you say, to how to work virtually, because a lot of people, some people don't know how to come to the office and work and get things done. They get, myself included, sometimes we get a little bit distracted. And so really prioritizing those things are important to have fruitful, outcomes in this virtual culture, and really define how you work together. What are some of your key, factors in culture, remote culture, and the ability of really keeping people connected? That's all over the states. We got some places, and you work with tons of organizations, huge organizations that are outside of the states, and they're virtual. What are some of the key factors for you?
Yeah, I think I think having a strategy is key because when it's left to the moment, a lot of times we miss opportunities. For instance, if I'm in a person working in an office and I walk past you in the hallway, those kind of things happen organically. Naturally, we're going to talk. If I sent you an email, I'll mention it. And you'll say, oh, I forgot, I have to do such and such, but I'll get to that. And then it's, so you've got that interesting dynamic. Now that is a culture. And just because we move into a remote culture doesn't mean that, the culture is bad or that it's not going to be as good if we don't get together. The question is, what is the good that we can find, and what is the benefit to this? And then also, because it presents those challenges, we have to have that meaningful work. We have to be communicating as you're talking, as you've mentioned. But we also have to understand that that there are opportunities within remote work that give us moments to actually build trust with our team, to build a culture that's going to look different than it did when we were all together.
Right.
We cannot remanufacture what we had before a company goes remote and then have that same type of culture when they go remote. A remote culture is different. The question is going to be, are your values different because you're remote?
Yeah.
Is your mission different? Is your vision different? If it's not, all of your observable behaviors, all of your beliefs and the feelings and programming and strategy and all that you were talking about in terms of measurement, all of that, regardless of where your employees are. And we've had to do this, as you mentioned, because we built culture of good in a decentralized culture where people are spread out in 42, 43 states at the time. um, when we were doing that, we had to understand that all of our activity needed to feed into the five promises. What are you promising as a company to your employees? What are you promising to your customers? And what are you promising to your community? What are those promises? Those are your values and how they're going to be lived out in each of those key stakeholder groups, regardless of where your employees are. And so, as you're thinking about your leadership and management of your team, your engagement efforts, your strategy, we're almost out of time here, but culture of good, as we train it, re-engages the workforce every single quarter. So, one of the key secrets that I would add at the very end of this is, regardless of what strategy you use ADKAR, but then also look at how to engage your key stakeholder groups on a quarterly basis. And if you're able to come to the training, you'll learn how to streamline all of that into one effort. But if you don't, essentially what you'll need to be doing is engaging with your employees, customers, and your community quarterly as an intentional strategy, so that in between the intentional connection where everyone's maybe collectively getting together, we are giving high fives, we're doing good together, whatever it is, in a culture of good, we're volunteering, it's philanthropic, but it's building community that way and culture. That is a key. There has to be a strategy. And I know we're out of time, and maybe we should do part 2 next week on this, man, because there's
Yeah.
so much more.
There is, and I think it's important in the beginning, Ryan, as we wrap this up. I know we started a little bit late, but set clear goals and expectations from the beginning. That at the end of the day, you typically move towards what you envision and where your eyes are focused. Right. I was thinking about this the other day. We were downtown in Nashville, had some friends in town, and your eyes go in the direction. You move in the direction of your eyes, right?
Yeah.
And so. I would always say, where are your company's eyes focused on?
Yeah.
And is that what it needs to be? What are the main focus? Are you focused on the tiers that you need to be focused on? Or are you getting distracted and losing that focus and expectation? But it's got to be clear. And that starts, as always, my brother, from the top.
Yeah.
Always
It
from the
does,
top.
man. It does. And it has to be carried by all middle management. And then it needs to be owned and lived by all. Culture is how most of us feel, believe, and behave most of the time. And I'm so glad that you all jumped on here with us this week. George, it was great chatting. We'll go to part 2 on this next week if you want to. Does that
sounds good, man? Sounds
all right.
good.
So thank you for joining us. Let's try to say champion your culture at the same time, George. Maybe we'll end every podcast like this. Thank you for joining our podcast. We'll see you next week on
Champion Your
Culture.
Culture.
Peace.